that historical perspective would tell you that actually it's not about improving a manuscript, it's about helping the editor or highlighting the good bits of a manuscript, right? The current system is not that.
Welcome to the Reproducibility Podcast, an open science podcast that features early career researchers and their perspectives on the current movement in science. I'm Will, coming for the first time from Adelaide University, where I would like to acknowledge that I reside and work on the unceded lands of the Kaurna people, who are the traditional owners of the land.
Hello everyone. So my name is Queen Saikia. And I'm coming from the University of Leeds, UK. I'm finally a PhD candidate, and I work on how a protein helps in blood vessel formation. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jonny Coates, who is the Associate Director of ASAPBio. So Jonny, it's over you.
And I get to come to you from my house because I don't work in a physical location anymore. But I'm based just outside of London for reference, if you want to pinpoint me on a map.
Yeah, and what is your role at ASAPBio?
So I'm the Associate Director, which is a difficult role to describe because we do a lot of stuff. ASAPBio is a team of 2, so we really do pretty much everything. But I'm primarily responsible for anything community-based. So we run a fellows program every year that I'm responsible for. We do a lot of community calls, content creation, outreach, everything.
Yeah, you name it. I think we're familiar with that on our side as reproducibility. Small teams trying to make initiatives happen, right? So today we have an exciting episode. The overall topic will be reviews, or specifically preprint reviews. Jonny, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction into how ASAPBio is involved in the preprint review? Like, where did that come about?
Yeah, we can also diss traditional peer review a bit as well. So ASAPBio's involvement with preprint peer review actually came quite early on. So ASAPBio has been around since around 2016, 2017. And we primarily focus on the adoption of preprints in the life sciences. One of the easiest ways to get people to use preprints is to have preprints that are being peer reviewed, despite my misgivings about the peer review system. And so our primary effort in this area, other than the advocacy stuff we do, is that we run a crowd preprint review initiative every year. And we've done this is year 4 now. And basically what that is, it's just a virtual journal club. It's the best way to describe it. And so we have, every year we put a call out for various crowds. This year we've got 4 crowds. We've got immunology, cell biology, microbiology, and meta-research. People are very happy cell biology is back. We've got a bit of flack last year for not having a cell biology crowd. And those crowds are led by 2 to 3 crowd leads. These are mostly people who have been part of the crowd in the past. And every month they send a chosen preprint out to the crowd. It's all in a Google Doc because we like to keep the technical requirements low. And basically, the crowd members have 2 weeks to comment line by line on the given preprint. Once they've done that, we close the commenting. The crowd leads will synthesize all of that into what looks like a very normal traditional review. We post those onto PREreview because they're great, lovely people to work with, also great platform. And then we also send that to the authors. And that is our process. We do a new preprint every month, and we're aiming for at least 10 preprints reviewed per crowd by the end of, this time next year. That's giving them 2 months off if they want to take it. So some might do a couple more preprints this year.
Yeah, wow, exciting. I guess my first question is, why preprints? Why the focus on preprints specifically?
We had a board meeting last week, and this topic actually came up. ASAPBio is not founded, surprisingly to a lot of people, for preprints. It was about accelerating the dissemination of science and results and creating a better system. The reason we very much focused on preprints and will continue to do so is because that is the way to change the system. There's a lot, as probably most people are aware of, there's a lot of open science, open access initiatives. There's so many different colours involved and it gets all very confusing. I'm not sure anyone can quite explain the difference between bronze, gold, diamond, green. And I'm supposed to know this stuff and I sometimes struggle to remember the difference. So very confusing, big field of lots of different people trying different things. The problem is almost all those initiatives are basically what we have, but slightly better in some way. So if we take Diamond OA as an example, Diamond Open Access is great because there's no cost for the reader or the author. So we get rid of those APCs, which are making everyone's life an absolute misery, unless you're a shareholder in Elsevier, at which point you are an amazing person because you made a really wise decision and you're very, very rich right now. But you're doing that at the detriment of science and society. So, you're a horrible person, but you're a rich person. Whereas preprints actually offer a very viable alternative to this system. They're a way of breaking away from journal names, any of the traditional metrics, impact factor, all these things we know don't work. And it's not that I'm saying they don't work. I can give you so many references and bits of data and evidence to tell you they don't work. And so because preprints offer this viable alternative, that's what we've chosen to focus on. They break the stranglehold that publishers have, not just on publishing, right? This isn't just a publishing thing, which often I think kind of gets narrowed down to just being science communication. It's not. This is all about changing the entire research ecosystem because as a researcher, you get promoted, you get grants, you get judged on where you've published. It all comes back to publishing. And, there's a lot of problems in research at the moment, as, again, everyone is unfortunately aware of. If we can change the publishing system, we break free of all of that. We change the incentive structure completely. Now it's not about publishing as many papers as possible. It's about publishing good, high quality science. It's about being transparent and open and mentoring people and how you are as a person, which are all things that you'd think would matter when you're hiring someone to mentor a small group of people. But at the moment, none of that really comes into consideration.
Yeah, wow.
Right.
I said I was good at ranting.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, one thing I really appreciate, I think Jonny that mentioned previously about the preprint review clubs. It's such a nice opportunity for anyone interested, including the postgraduate researchers who can actually go through the reviewing process. And I don't think has been anything like an initiative like this where we get a chance at such an early stage to review preprints or any manuscripts. So why did you decide having early career researchers, like anyone interested into it?
This is the big benefit of preprints, right? They are, because you remove all that extra fluff that's around our current system, it's about expertise. And I've always maintained the people who are most expert in a lab technique are probably the PhD students, if not actually the technicians. They're the real experts in any lab. And anyone who runs a bioscience lab will understand the importance of a good technician. They are worth more than anything else you could ever get your hands on in life. Because they're the ones doing it every day, right? The PI, usually, a new PI is great because they're still quite hands-on. The old guys who've been doing it for 20 years, they couldn't tell you how to do it as lab technique right now because they haven't done it for 20 years. In fact, it's probably a different technique now. They're good at different things, right? So when it comes to peer review, again, it comes down to what peer review is. And if it's assessing the technical part of a manuscript, you want the technical people to do that. They're the ones who, for some reason, the traditional system ignores. Preprints mean we don't have to do that. We don't have these weird systems in place. So it's open to everyone. And, you mentioned early career researchers. They're very welcome to take part. But also, if you're not a researcher, but you have relevant expertise, you're welcome to take part. We have literally no requirement. Obviously, if you comment and it's not a very viable comment, we just won't use it. Because, we have checks in place by people who know what they're talking about. And so we can filter that out. We've never had that as a problem yet. But it makes it a lot more equal, a lot fairer. And the training aspect is the thing I probably like the most about what we do, because when I got my first manuscript to review, I had no idea what I was doing. Don't even know why I got asked to do it. And so I did this review, terrified that I'd done a terrible job because I didn't have a clue what I was talking about. And it wasn't until I saw the other reviews, because this was the system I was in at the time, that luckily I saw the other people's reviews. And I saw that they were saying the same things I was saying, so I felt like maybe actually, okay, maybe I was, well, I didn't do a terrible job at least. Or if I did, they were also terrible. And, yeah, all equally as good or as bad as each other. And, that, because we don't get this training, you shouldn't go into that situation thinking you're going to do a bad job. You should go into thinking you're going to do a really good job. And so because what we're doing, it's open, you can see each other's comments, you can feed off each other's comments. And the big benefit of what we're doing, because it's a crowd, you don't have to comment on the whole paper. If you don't know what you're talking about, you don't have to say anything. So literally in our system, if you can only comment on a single figure or a panel of a figure, that is your contribution to the review. Because as a crowd, if everyone does that, we have a full review. And it works really, really well for that kind of purpose.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this crowd element to the review, because right now in our current systems, it's one or two people, or three if you're lucky, doing the reviews and supposedly being the what's the word I'm searching for? The bastion of scientific quality. And who's doing that, spending enough time to make sure that quality is being upheld? So the crowd aspect is fascinating to me. So how do you think about the diversity of the group and the people, or the elements of that kind of group work to review a paper together?
Diversity is another good word, because of course this is a global effort, so we get a much greater diversity in the people reviewing as well. We don't just go to the same small pool that the journals would go to, right? It is self-selecting, so people volunteer to do it. The crowd element, I think, adds a number of things to this, because we've all heard the problems of finding reviews at the moment. We've probably all had an article that's taken forever sitting on an editor's desk because they can't find reviews at the moment. The crowd element allows people who want to review to actually do it. And there's so many people, there's not an issue of people wanting to review. The issue is the journals don't want, for whatever reason, that group of people to do the reviewing. Whether that's because of where you're based in the world or because of your perceived expertise level. We do away with all of that. And so we've got we're up to 100 and something signups this year. We've literally only just launched it this month as well for this year's run. Last year we had 220 people sign up as crowd members.
Let me drop some stats for our listeners that I came across. 27 bioRxiv reviews in 2022, which I believe, so that's 27 groups doing a review of a paper, I believe, and 13 Sci-Elo. And in 2023, that was increased to 34 public reviews, all by ASAPBio fellows. So, a good amount of work is being done to through these efforts, right? Through these initiatives to try and review these preprints.
Yeah, it's the good thing is actually those numbers, depending on your perspective, sound low or high. In the terms of preprint peer review, they're quite high because there's not a lot of preprint reviewing really happening at the moment, right? So it is actually a really good, quite impactful effort. The other thing this year is we've also launched this fund and effort to convert current journal clubs, so these are the in-person things that we all have to sit through, and to convert those into preprint review clubs. So not only do we have these virtual clouds this year, we've also got these in-person ones, and we funded 6, I think, off the top of my head, so far this year. For those, we're asking for 4 reviews over the course of the year, but there's another whole bunch of reviews that this year will come out of the same program, and we're aiming to fund a few more of those as the year goes on, so we'll get even more. And it's not about giving money to get people to do things, just a little push to get them to do something. We will buy you pizza and you do a review for us. But the thing is, these activities are all being done already all over the world, but they're not being used. So all we really want to do is get people to then post them publicly and stop reviewing papers. They've already been reviewed. You're wasting your time.
Also, the best part is the ones who reviews also get credited. They get mentioned with the ORCID ID. So I think this is something that people have not been acknowledged for the reviewing that they have done for over years. But I think through this, it's been a fantastic effort. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing we're working more on actually this year. So because we team with PREreview to post the reviews, your reviews get a DOI. And you get that integration with ORCID, so you get that kind of recognition. We're also might soon be working on a pilot to give you an extra set of recognition, separate from all of that. And we've designed digital badges this year. So if you do 5, 10, 15, 20 reviews, you get a digital badge, which is, if you don't know, it's basically a certificate that actually recognizes you've done these things. And this year, we've also teamed up with one journal in talks with a few others about using this as part of the journal process now. So we're piloting that this year. If that works well, hopefully next year that might be a thing some journals actually adopt as part of their process. Cool. We've had discussions with eLife about sort of them thinking about doing this at some point. So they might be somebody we team up with. But it's a good year for this because it really seems to have jumped forward this year into something even bigger than it has been so far.
True.
Yeah, I'm sensing it's a trend. You mentioned eLife, who completely switched their publishing model to include a preprint-esque review system. And yeah, other journals are sort of moving in that direction. So we're sort of seeing a sense of like peer evaluation happening before, like, without the need to like go through this process of submission and then so on and so forth. Like peer community in is another initiative that kind of does something similar. The Unjournal, and truthfully, this is across all disciplines, not just biology, but
no, and you know the Unjournal is a good mention because I had a meeting with those guys recently, and they want to adopt our approach of converting the journal clubs. We're different fields, so we can't do that for them. But we had a really good chat. They're going to do something similar for their fields. So it really is nice to see it sort of expanding out.
Yeah, in psychology, there was the Replicats initiative, which was very similar, paying people to review papers and contribute to the SCORE project. Yeah, so this seems to be a trend that's happening. And it feels like something that people should try and jump on the wave, right?
Yeah, I mean, get on early and you get more benefits than if you wait until everyone else is doing it. So yeah, early adopters in this space, really good thing.
True.
I'm curious about like selfish benefits to this. We kind of mentioned like it as a potential training opportunity for early career researchers, but yeah, what are some sort of selfish benefits from either organizing one of these preprint review journal clubs or taking part in one?
If anyone's seen Richard Sever give a talk, there's a slide he often includes that I've stolen. So if you see me give a talk recently, you'll see it in my slide deck as well. And what he does is he's basically presenting CV, the PhD CV 2.0. So you've got your papers on there as you normally would have, but now you've also got preprints. You've got preprint reviews, and you can have a long list of reviews, and you've got preprint highlighting. So if you do something with Prelight, for example. The benefits, obviously, there's huge benefits to you as a person, right? If you're a reviewer, you get to build up your profile as a reviewer. So you'll get these journal invites to review more often. And also, it's a really good way of understanding how science works if you're early, like even earlier career. If I'm imagining grad students who they're not being taught how to do this, so you join something like what we're doing, and you're not directly getting taught how to do it, but you're seeing how everyone else is doing it. So you are picking up how to critically analyze the literature, right? And that's kind of what preprints are about. They're about making you critically analyze things, not just rely on some horrible proxy that also none of you know how it really works or why it's broken, but you'll rely on it anyway, which is ridiculous. And I'm talking like professors who do this as well. But it takes away all of that. And so we are training you indirectly. That's great for your future in terms of just how you think about science. I had, when I was doing my PhD supervisor was amazing at talking about controls. He was so good at controlling experiments that every now and then he would do something that was really, really great, and then he'd go and do a million controls, and now that was no longer so great. Everyone else would have just published it as it was. Now, great science, right? That's how you do great science. And that's what good science is meant to be. You're meant to think about every possible solution. That's something I think you really do learn when you look at peer reviewing, because the whole point, the current perception of peer review is that it's meant to break a paper down and make it better.
Right.
We can talk about the historical aspect of that and how wrong that thought of thinking is, but that's sort of how people do peer review now. And so even when we're doing it, you still get those kind of comments, although we try to discourage it. And so you get all this training, you get all this stuff you can put on your CV. if you're organizing crowd, you then get all this organizational stuff. There's kind of an editorial aspect to it. So if you're wanting to get out of the lab and apply for editorial positions, you've kind of got a little bit of experience now of doing something similar. You've got the experience of actually, like the crowd leads choose, like we're very hands off. The crowd leads pick the preprint. So you're also showing you've got an eye for interesting science. And then obviously all the organizational skills that come with that. So there's huge, CV wise, lots of benefits. The other thing, which is less tangible, but certainly something I noticed when I was writing pre-light, for example, years ago, is that you end up talking to the authors, and because this is usually your field you're writing about, you start connecting with people in your field. So if we take preprints as an example, my background is immunology, PhD was in like fruit flies, and then I started writing pre-light. I started getting a bit more interested in meta science and preprints, and before I'd even done anything big in that space, I'd already managed to have loose connections with like the big players just by doing this kind of activity and by chatting with them or saying, well, I've just reviewed your preprint. It was really good. And they, for the most part, the authors do actually respond. We get some really great feedback, and you then help your profile raises a little bit. And that, I can't understate how important that is in science.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah, it's a bit of a hidden curriculum thing.
no, I was just saying it's a nice way of like networking as well with people of the same field and learning in the process of communicating. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think a lot of this. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, yeah, that's like a hidden curriculum thing. Like people don't understand how important networking is and the ways to communicate and the ways to network. In addition to how paper submissions work, how reviews work, how to do a impactful or useful review, a helpful review, and all that. So that's sort of like not in your standard training. It's sort of like you got to figure out by experience. And if you're, let's say, first gen or like new to a field or so on and so forth, you're just running headfirst into these barriers. Yet here we have an option that seems to, it's sort of like a easy, low risk, benefiting way to like kind of take your first steps into those kind of responsibilities.
Also, I think Johnny have mentioned that now the pre-review, like peer review system has changed, and it was like different in the old times. So, do you want to tell us more about what the history of peer review was?
So talking about stuff nobody teaches you. Nobody teaches you why we do science the way we do it, which I always find really interesting because, so we'll take peer review as an example. When you talk to people about peer review, most, certainly life scientists, because they're the people I talk to, will tell you, we've been doing peer review for 350 years. We've been doing it for so long that it's a very well established system. It is the gold standard to protecting the literature. Firstly, peer review protects nothing other than the reputation of journals. And even then, it's not peer review doing that. So the question is where they're getting this notion from. And it all comes back down to the Royal Society in the UK. So about 350 years ago, we started to see the first journals launched. And for some reason, people conflate journal with peer review. 350 years ago, there was no peer review. It's not what was happening. The name most people will be familiar with, if you have any understanding of this, is Henry Oldenburg. He was one of the first people in charge of the Proceedings Journal with the Royal Society. He didn't send things out for peer review. He made a decision whether he liked something or not, as to whether it got in the journal. And that's the system, actually, that stayed for basically 350 years. But actually, you can go back further. So you can go back to sort of like 4th, 5th century BC. And you're talking like ancient Greece kind of times, ancient Syria kind of times. They had something that you could kind of call peer review. And this is all medical based. So anyone who is in the medical field will know that. Certainly junior doctors will always have their work checked. And that is peer review. I mean, when we write something as an academic, usually somebody else is reading it and giving you feedback. That is peer review. What we're really talking about when people say peer review is journal organized peer review. Now, I already said that what is not 350 years old, and it really isn't. There's been a few different ideas around that time. So Henry Oldenburg kind of did it all himself. There's a guy I really like called William Whewell. I assume I'm pronouncing his surname right. I think he was another editor of the proceedings. And he basically kind of said what eLife is now doing. So he there's a comment from him where he's talking about the importance of the peer review reports as being more significant than the actual scientific article is, and that they can be used as a way of publicity for the scientific article. And if you think about it, that's now what eLife are doing, right? eLife is saying the more important part is what the reviews are saying, and the reliability and the integrity and all that kind of stuff. And that actually is an advertisement for the scientific article. So it's funny to see that come full circle. But if we're talking about journal organized peer reviews, we currently sort of understand it. That historical perspective would tell you that actually it's not about improving a manuscript, it's about helping the editor or highlighting the good bits of a manuscript, right? The current system is not that. The current system really is, how can we get you to put your next paper in this current paper, which I hate. Mm-hmm. And how many more experiments can we get you to do? How long can we make you do it for? And how much money can we get you to spend? How many postdocs do you burn through before you get your paper published? And that, again, people, even if they say, okay, maybe that's not 350 years old, it's still very modern, a lot of them will go back much further than they think it's happening. So, actually, there you go. I'll ask you both. When do you think modern peer review came about? Don't answer if you know the answer. That's cheating.
Do you want to go ahead, Quinn?
I think I attended this talk, but I can't remember the date, so I think I'm free to make a guess. I think 50 to 100 years.
Yeah, I was going to say like 1920s, 30s.
1970s.
1970s, okay. Wow.
So most journals, and later, most journals didn't adopt like peer review as we know it until the 1970s, if not later. Nature's a really good example. Nature did not start doing peer review for all their papers until like the mid-1970s. So you get really interesting stories like the DNA double helix paper was not peer reviewed. Actually, there's a quote from Watson where the reason they sent that paper to Nature is because at the time Nature had a really, really quick process of submission to published. And I think that might have been like a week for that article. Can't quite remember. Wow. And so it wasn't because it had this great reputation. It was just they knew the editors and it would get through. And there was no peer review. There's the story of Einstein had a paper that was sent to review by an editor, and Einstein was so unhappy at the thought of that he pulled the paper and submitted it elsewhere. And the thing is, because it's so recent, you get all these really big name biologists in particular who came out and said, well, this is a horrible system. Why are we doing this? What's the point? We don't need this system. And that's not that long ago. And now we're at the point where we're so far on the other side of that, which is this is an amazing system. We can't possibly lose it or do it better. And it's a very weird, relatively quick turn of mindset there. But it's a really interesting sort of history to explore, and something that we should be teaching people, because it tells you that it's an experiment. And that helps, I do so much talking about how peer review is a failed experiment, as do a lot of other people. And it doesn't matter how much evidence you present to a person, and I'm having this argument a lot lately, people just won't, they'll pull apart an individual study, or they'll come up with every possible reason as to why who cares what the evidence says. And part of the problem is, peer review pretty much does universally improve a paper. You can't really argue against that because you're getting made to do more experiments. Your confidence intervals generally go down a little bit. It does improve a paper. The question is not, does it improve a paper? The question is it worth all that money and time to improve your paper to the point where we know key conclusions don't change. And then you've got the argument of, well, it protects the literature. And it doesn't.
That's true.
Again, so many papers telling you it doesn't. And it's such a hard mindset. I hate it. That's the thing I rant most about at the moment. There is a way of doing it better. And we do everything very transparently, very openly. That is one huge step towards a much better way of doing peer review. The other way, of course, is just not do it. For the majority of articles, let's not bother wasting that effort and time, and instead keep it for those articles where you really need someone to go in depth on something. So maybe this is the medical field, right? Maybe anything medical gets an insane level of scrutiny on it, so that we are actually protecting people. And if we did that, there's many examples of very high profile examples where things wouldn't have come out. We wouldn't have so much vaccine hesitancy at the moment if we'd done that approach, because those papers in particular would never have been published. Because they'd have had so much scrutiny on them, we would have found out it was a load of rubbish before it got shared with the world. And there's better ways of doing it, is my argument.
Yeah, what comes to mind is that it feels like it's impeding. It's impeding scientific progress rather than enhancing it. And I think, if you talk to a lot of scientists, what will change their minds is not necessarily the peer review that they got on their paper. It might be a replication or, the body of evidence. Whereas this kind of attention or, let's say, fixation on publishing a paper and getting it reviewed and that being the standard sort of murkies the whole philosophy of science of it being accumulative and it, thinking about evidence in the sense of a body of work across, multiple replications and requiring the need to replicate work or reproduce work to, get to a greater understanding, to try and produce this knowledge.
And, bringing that back down to the training part of the question, we need to start teaching meta science and how we do science, because at the moment we teach what we think is the way to do science, but that's not the reality of actually doing science. I don't think it has been for a very, very long time either. The reality is we chase publication numbers. We don't look at quality as much as we should. We are so wrapped up in that system of perverse incentives that's actually directing how we do science now. And that's not to the benefit of science, it's not to the benefit of society, it's not to the benefit of all those who pay our taxes and put money into this system. And that really needs to be changing. Again, come back to the earlier question about preprints, that's what preprints do.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it affects so much to the creativity of the authors. Like they think a creative approach to like address a question in science, and then when they get asked by the reviewers, why is this, the whole manuscript takes a different shape by the time it gets published, and it doesn't become a creative point of view from the authors. It becomes like a mixture of lots of things. So I know it's really a pain for people. Like it's I mean I have also like seen people like they have been like in the process of like addressing and like revising the manuscript. It took them years to complete. So yeah, it's such a pain. And
Yeah, a lot of stress and unhappiness in our industries. Like, yeah, I don't think anyone's really like, super excited to meet criticism whenever they get it. They're like, oh, reviewer 2 has gone off and like, lambasted my work. It's not the most positive thing in the world.
yeah.
So yeah, so on the point of this kind of stuff should be taught. I think reproducibility and its sort of journal club network is an initiative that's trying to get this kind of content into institutions and into graduate research training. So I guess I'd love to hear more about how ASAPBio is supporting journal clubs to convert, as you said, to preprint journal clubs. Yeah, what do you have in place there?
So for us, it's about being very hands off. So we offer a flat $200 in the form of a virtual credit card now, because the other systems we tried were painful. And basically that is to be spent on refreshments, right? So maybe you order pizza or you order donuts and sweet stuff and coffee, whatever you want. So we're not paying you to do the reviews, we're paying you for the time you'd be spending anyway, which is making that time a little bit better. And in return, we ask for 4 reviews. Everything is left up to the journal clubs, so they get to choose what preprints they review. They get to choose where they share the reviews. We give them a guide on how to do a preprint review, which is just a guide on how to do a peer review. We've got a poster for different ways you can share a preprint review that we give them. We offer to come and give them a talk as well about preprints and peer review if they want it. But otherwise, we're very hands off because they're already doing all of this. All we're saying is, could you please write it up and put it online? They can do it anonymously if they want to do, or they can attach their names to it. And so the hope is, by being so hands off and leaving it to them, we're generally just providing a tiny incentive that once they start doing it, they'll see that authors are very receptive to this. They're generally very positive. You get a lot out of doing it, and so not only will they carry on doing it when they've run out of our money, but they'll tell other people, and other people start doing it. And this is part of a wider effort we're undertaking to try and really spark this and ignite this much more broadly. Because as you said, right, if you go looking for it, there are quite a few initiatives that do these kind of things, that try and get these kind of things taught, whether it's indirectly or directly. We have people associated with ASAPBio who run graduate courses, and they use Preprint review as the assessment to that course, which is great. And that's another initiative we've got this year, is we're kind of collating those examples so other people can copy them and go out and do them. I would love to actually get into a university and have a course that we can teach that can then be the basis for other people to copy and do. So there are plenty of initiatives, you just kind of got to look for them. And ours is super easy because it's a very, very simple form to fill out. Go on our website, fill it out, comes to me. As long as you filled it out appropriately, I will give you the money. It's remarkable how many people don't fill it out appropriately. Like you can't use our money to spend on Amazon, for example. A lot of people want to spend on Amazon. That's an easy way for me to go no. So we actually had quite a lot of applications, but we've only funded 6. But go through that very basic step, and then we give you the money and we leave you to it. I'll be checking in with our converted clubs probably towards the end of the year, just to see how they're going. But I expect it to go really well. It's literally what they're already doing.
So how many journal clubs have signed up for this so far?
So we had 20 something applications so far, and we've signed up 6. Most of those are US based. So if you're not in the US, please apply. The only real restriction we have is where we can send money. So there are some countries where we just can't send money to it, so we can't do it there, which is not my fault. And I wish that wasn't the case. But for the most part, it can be quite a global thing. And we're still advertising it. We haven't really advertised it that much. So, this is one way of doing that. But yeah, I encourage everyone to apply. And even if we don't fund you, I encourage everyone to do it anyway, because there are so many benefits you get out of it that aren't pizza. Pizza only lasts once. Once you've eaten it, it's gone. Yeah. Whereas the benefits of actually doing this activity, like that can be your career making things in some cases.
Yeah, shout out to the reproducibility journal clubs who aren't necessarily in biology, since we're predominantly psychology based for most of us, though we do have some biology groups. This sounds like a useful exercise. I know some organizers are like, I've run out of ideas, we're sick of reviewing journal papers together. This seems like a fantastic and a fun thing to do, to go through a paper, collaborate, figure out what a good review for this paper would be, write it together, and also to get useful outcomes out of it. For example, communication with the authors, getting insights into how one might do a review, how to read a paper and critically evaluate it. Seems like a lot of good can come about from this.
Yeah, I always hated journal clubs because you were reviewing something that had already been reviewed. You were doing effort that was pointless because it wasn't going to help the authors. Even if you found something wrong, it wasn't going to help the authors because they can't change it once it's been published. In my experience, at least, it was never really much. There was no real training involved. It was just a bunch of students going and commenting on a paper, and they don't really know necessarily what they're doing all the time either. Whereas a better way of doing just that would have been to have the reviews with the paper, so at least you've got something to compare it to. You can see what someone who has done a lot of reviews has done. But again, it's still wasted effort. So I just don't, in my mind, really struggles with that, because why waste your time when you can do something that is exactly the same activity, but it's productive because now you're contributing to somebody's paper and your own careers. It's so many benefits to doing it. And my mind gets really stuck on that. I just don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's such a nice exercise. I mean, in terms of, I think journal clubs, in a way, it is also it. Initially, when I was new to reproducibility, I had no idea about what other like fields, what open research in different other fields goes around. So through involvement, people from widely different field has an idea about things. It's just basic level, but when it comes to contribution, I think the preprints are definitely it's a very good initiative. Yeah. And also when it comes to like contribution, it's not just reviewing or editing or like giving our effort for the authors. It also helps to shape our own research design when we know that, okay, that's how it should be, that's how the questions are going forward, so let's design our own research this way. So it's definitely very yeah, productive.
And so the other thing that I've not mentioned actually as a benefit, there are a few examples now where people have publicly reviewed a preprint and they've become collaborators. There's a really good example, again, stolen from Richard Sever, of a timeline where a group posted their preprint, another group commented about it and they had a discussion on Twitter or X, and then they actually collaborated and had the first date from their collaboration before that preprint was published. And that's months of time that was saved by having a preprint in the first place, and also a whole brand new collaboration. There's reviews we've done as part of the crowd review in the past. So last year we had a really good example. We reviewed a preprint and we said this should probably be two different bits of work, and so now the authors have two papers instead of one, and it's great for them. Nice to have that kind of contribution. So there's so many other benefits as well to this.
And also, who's reading papers generally? Like, we're producing at such an amount that's only increasing, that it feels like it makes sense to just collaborate and do better research together in more,
Quality over quantity.
yes, more larger scale, more quality across more people,
Yeah.
more projects that are like that, rather
I
than
mean,
our isolated lab.
yeah. And that's kind of what science, it's meant to be collaborative, right? We're meant to work together. And it's something like, if you're very lucky if your paper gets read by 100 people or something, right? And if it gets cited by 100 people, like you're in, I think it's the top 50, if not higher, percentage of papers. It's really not difficult to get a very highly rated paper based on like the number of people reading it, because nobody reads science. We're all out there doing all this work. And the sad reality is, outside of your field, very, very few people read it, which is that's not a bad thing. Like, why would you want people all over the world reading your work? It's meant to be very esoteric and nitty gritty in particular, to the point where it's probably only going to be of interest to a small number of people. It's how we move forward in small steps. But it's the expectations, I think, of scientists often don't quite match that reality.
Yeah. I mean, we do have to get away from this one person's going to solve it all, and this Kuhnian paradigm shift idea where like someone's going to fix everything for us. I don't know. It seems a little bit more
Yeah.
communalist, perhaps, if I were to put it in Merton's norms, that of a way of doing science, to reach out, actually read someone's work, offer a collaboration, and see if you can make progress on that question together. Seems much better.
True.
This sounds like a good place to sort of wrap things up. Were there any last things that you wanted to rant about, or perhaps shout out?
I think I've ranted enough. I I think maybe a good place for me to end would be just to tell everyone to preprint and review preprints and use your time more productively and wisely. And it's really not about, you get a lot of benefits out of it, but it's not about the benefits you get out of it. It's about changing the system for everyone involved. And I think that's the one thing when we talk about preprints, whether it's preprint review or just preprinting in generally, it's the one message we don't get across very well, which is it's the potential to really lead to real meaningful change. That's why you should preprint, and that's why you should review preprints. You just happen to get loads of benefits from doing it as well.
Yeah, I think the message of our publishing system has to change. We have for-profit publishers making tons of money off the backs of taxpayers' money, as well as scientists' effort, which is mostly unrewarded, unrecognized, propping up these systems that are almost antithetical to science. There is an alternative. Put your work out as preprints, review others' preprints, comment, communicate, collaborate. That is taking a step to creating a positive change in our scientific ecosystem across all fields.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I think with time we should just like evolve and adapt to the changing trends. And I think preprints currently is such a nice. It's an open access to your to the breadth of knowledge that anyone is looking for. So I think, yeah, I think we should all advocate as well as like participate and collaborate in this system. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so where should our listeners either sign up for these preprint review clubs or follow you on your endeavors with ASAPBio?
So everything is just easy if you go to our website, so asapbio.org. I think this is all under the community section or the peer review section. But that's generally it's a really good place for resources. You'll find anything you would ever want to know about preprints. There's an answer on our website. You just have to find it. There's a bunch of other initiatives we're running that you can also get involved with. We've got money for any project you want to do around preprints as well. Otherwise, I always suggest people come and talk to me. You can email me. My email is very easy to find out there. jonny.coates@asapbio.org. Or find me on any of the social medias. I'm on them all at the moment because we haven't settled on one yet. I wish we would. I'm most active, I guess, on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I'm very easy to find on both. jacoates.co.uk is a website for anything me. But also everything me at the moment is ASAPBio. So I'm not... Maybe we need to design tangle those. But yeah, I'm very, very, very easy to find.
Yeah, maybe you need to do a little bit of a recruiting. What do you call it? Recruiting. What's the word? Ron?
Communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Go reach out and see if you're interested joining ASAPBio, maybe helping them out with their awesome initiative. Quinn, where can people find you?
I'm also available via LinkedIn and Twitter as well. And I think I should have mentioned this in my introduction, but I'm also one of the ASAPBio fellows. So I'm also found in the ASAPBio's website. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, shout out to any of the early career researchers in biology listening. Look out to becoming an ASAPBio fellow. That's a great way to get involved. Yeah.
And what about you, Will?
Yep. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with me screaming about open science for the past few years, I am not really on much social media recently, but you can probably find me on Blue Sky if you search Will Ngiam at bsky.social. Or you can email me at my new address, william.ngiam@adelaide.edu.au. Yeah. So thank you for listening. And thank you, Jonny, for joining us and sharing your awesome thoughts.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great rant.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we are good at this.